Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. The sense of the abyss, the framework, fertility cults, grey legend myth, the numerous allusions, and a heap of broken images showed against the ruins of modern man fishing for life lend the wasteland a rare and rich unity. Each section is a separate poem on its own, but there is an underlying inviolable link which string together all sections and make it more than a single whole. In a way, the whole poem is a complex rendering of the modern man with the aid of a modern mind. In one way, it is a desperate search for the restoration of fertility by refurnishing the sunken spirit of man. The quest of the knight in Western for a glimpse of the Grail to bring back fertility to the land and potency to the king is very much in keeping with the need of the battered and barren protagonist and arid land, which Eliot draws imaginatively in The Wasteland. Fragments of fertility cults are placed in different parts of the poem to yield a complex oneness. Effigies are drowned only to be reclaimed. The sunken spirit of modern man badly needs a rise, just as in fertility rites. Eliot lends the poem another layer of unity by tendering a lurid vision of the city of London. We have City of God by St. Augustine, the city of Dublin in James Joyce's Ulysses. As Helen Gardner puts it, the wasteland is built upon the myth of the mysterious sickness of the Fisher King in the Grail stories and the blight of infertility which has fallen upon his land, which can only be lifted when the destined deliverer asks the magician to perform the magic act. Some critics come out with the charge that Mr. Eliot discards plot and his poem has no solution or conclusion. However, it is not true. The mythical layer, linked allusions, and the thematic oneness, spiritual fall, degeneration of love into lust, barrenness for people, king and land alike, distortion of time-tested values, all lend the poem as a whole a laudable structural cohesion. Yet another method adopted by Eliot to give the poem a structural unity is musical repetition. He gives his poem unity partly by means of musical repetition and variation, but mainly by constant references to the underlying myth and to relate myths of death and rebirth. The poem drifts, fragments float, roots do not clutch, images are heaped, all facilitate an incessant movement, sometimes even insane movement. That restless movement, an inevitable sign of hollow men, the cursed inhabitants of the wasteland, lands structural unity of an unusual kind. Yet another strategy adopted by Eliot to give structural cohesion is to roll the characters and places into one another. He melts the characters, but they continue to be the bearers of the central concerns of the poem as a whole, from beginning to end. In his opinion, the most important character was Tiresias, just as the one-eyed merchant, seller of currants, melts into the Phoenician sailor, and the latter is not wholly distinct from Ferdinand, Prince of Naples. So all the women are one woman, and the two sexes meet in Tiresias. In the same way, the time is all time and no time. Though we are plainly at times in modern London, it is an unreal city, and in the last section, the city has vanished. It is all humanity that seems to be waiting then. The disciples have buried their Lord, and the women are lamenting the death of Syrian Adonis. The wasteland gains a structural force and cohesion by Eliot's linking of places. London, Vienna, Alexandria, deserts, the South Pole, the village Emmaus, Chapel Perilous, Sangan Ganga, distant Himavan are merged through shapes of horror and death in life. The wasteland is a series of visions, but they linked delicately to make a whole. At one level, each section has contrasting scenes, but at another level, there are many people, characters, though hazy, and scenes which have an underlying unity. In the burial of the dead, we have Mary, Isolde, Madame Sosostris, Tristram, the hanged man, Fisher King, overriding concerns, debunking of love, cheapening of sex, death in life, quest motif, recurring thematic sparks which strengthen a unified structure. In a game of chess, there are masterly contrasts. The modern lady, Cleopatra, Philomela tale, low-class women, hollow love, surrender to meaningless sex, demobbed humans, all yield structural cohesion. The death in life, bogged down by spiritual hollowness and physical debility, is delineated with commendable insight in a comprehensive way. Spenser's Prothalamion, Shakespeare's The Tempest, Jessiel Weston, Andrew Marvell, and such other sources are used to delineate depth and reach of the maladies of the wasteland. Definitely, this poetic technique renders structural unity. The fall of the lady typist and the presence of Tiresias, both man and woman, and a pervasive conscience, underscore Eliot's endeavor to connect all people, place, and time, and hence all sections of the poem too. While the lady typist, Elizabeth, Thebes daughters, Rhine daughters, all fall, Eliot also finds space and time to hint the possibilities of revival and regeneration. Magnus Martyr, fishermen, music, Anian splendor, even burning of fire, in spite of its multi-layered meaning, suggest a way out, cleansing, purgation, and resurrection. The point is that Eliot's vision is very much dependent on the preceding sections. Death by water also stresses the inevitable structural links. The crux of the section, Death by Water, fully delineates the paradoxical position of the unscrupulous, material-minded, spiritually hollow modern man. The very life-giving water seemingly consumes such people beyond recognition in the wasteland. From the structural point of view, in the last section, Eliot takes up the very same themes which he initiated in the first section. Of course, he lends it another dimension by bringing the West and East together and by elevating the very tenor of the poem to a spiritual height, which alone will show a way out to the maimed Fisher King and his people in the modern wasteland. It shows how the grey legend, quest motif, and the message of Prajapati are subtly merged and rounded off with the formal end of an Upanishad, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The very possibility of rain, actual or expected, is in agreement with the wasteland mood and need. which Eliot built up throughout the whole poem, not in separate sections alone. Structurally and thematically, The Wasteland is a single poem with an overarching, mythical, elusive, and musical pattern of its own, generating a terrible beauty. Eliot's primary concern is with the spiritual and religious fall of modern man. Denigration of ethics and traditional values disturb him. A non-Christian, violence-ridden, war-torn 20th century world prevails upon him to fall back on the cursed land of the maimed Fisher King, to draw a parallel between our times and theirs. Normally, he deems the modern wasteland to be devoid of fertility and its king to be impotent. Spiritual barrenness results in physical sterility and collapse. Love is displaced by lust. Healthy human relationships are supplanted with soulless contracts of convenience just on the basis of profit and loss. Eliot is appalled by the spiritual drought. He cannot but see such a humanity as dead, shrouded in forgetful snow, sustaining little life with dry tubers. Death in life becomes a major motif. In the burial of the dead, we have fruitless love relationships, a sort of death, perhaps more than death. The wasteland setup where no healthy values persist, Eliot is profoundly disturbed by the absence of life-sustaining religious spiritual values. Fear death by water is a major concern of Eliot. He is very much concerned with state of life in modern cities where men and women live like shaded ghosts with sick hurry and divided aims. Even in the midst of suffocating, inescapable thoughts relating to death, Eliot has recourse to fertility cults and rounds the distant possibility of rebirth. Death rebirth theme remains a recurrent one throughout the poem. The quest motif is closely related to the death rebirth theme. Side by side, Eliot stresses the need for spiritual strength and moral gleaning. Only by establishing a link with the higher order and faith, man can survive. It is a major theme running throughout the poem. Another theme, fragmentation of Eastern Europe. Eliot is also conscious of the need to find a way out to the spiritual and physical maladies infesting the wasteland. The solution he could think of is the resurgence of faith, strengthening of spirit, and the capacity to respond to higher values. Such a readiness on the part of modern advanced man alone will help the arid wasteland to hope for the showers which may bring Shanti to the people and land. Eliot is critical of the poor state of modern life with all its spiritual and physical ills. He is deeply disturbed, for he is fully aware of the gap between the past and the present, good and evil, love and lust, life and death, fertile land and the wasteland, potent king and an impotent one, and the like. Therefore, Eliot is critical in his stance, to a certain extent pessimistic too. In order to make full use of the enriched wisdom of a modern poetic mind, history, myth, religion, anthropology, classics, etc., all serving well the modern mind, Eliot resorts to a very sensitive use of primordial myths and complex time-tested symbols to delineate his profound concern with the state of modern life, bereft of spiritual and all other sustaining positive values. Clend Brooks says, in the application of these myths to the central theme, Eliot resorts to the principle of contrast. The contrast is between two kinds of life and two kinds of death. Life devoid of meaning is death, sacrifice. Even the sacrificial death may be life-giving and awakening to life. In his use of symbols and employment of myths, Eliot evinces a deep awareness of moral good and evil, action and inaction. The Sibyl of Cumae is used as a curtain raiser in the epigraph. In the first section, The Burial of the Dead, Eliot projects the paradoxical state of modern life, death in life. Men dislike to be roused from the death in life. Winter, the season of liberation, is symbolic of death. Biblical allusions, Ezekiel and Ecclesiastes, in the first section itself bring in the merging of fertility gods, the hanged man and the fisher king. Eliot again works upon these symbols to further death rebirth pattern even in the paradoxical perspective of the wasteland. Yet another symbolic dimension is given by rolling together the Phoenician sailor, the Smyrna merchant, the fertility god and the fisher king. Symbolic images from different sources are strung together to give a rare thrust to the complex thoughts worked in the poem. The major symbols are the wasteland, rock, water, tarot pack of cards, the hanged man, Tiresias, fire, grail, thunder, etc. Eliot has the ability to use literary allusions with symbolic ramifications. Allusions to Spenser, Shakespeare, Webster, Marvell, Middleton, Dante, Virgil, Wagner, Thomas Kidd, etc. illustrate this capacity. Classical legends used as symbolic signposts by the writer. Example, Philomela legend, Sibyl legend, divination acts, etc. Grail legends. There are allusions to popular songs and ballads, lending them a symbolic strain. Oh, that Shakespearean rag, Rhine Daughter's song, Thames Daughter's song. There are references to traditional laws and sermons, making them symbolic. Example, Buddha's fire sermon, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, last section, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Eliot thus uses resourcefully not only the mythical method but also the symbolic and elusive strategies to make the wasteland a complex and thought-provoking poem which moves any modern reader with a grain of conscience. Thank you all.